Hello, everyone. Dr. Caps coming back to you again. This is with another episode of our podcast, Dancing with the Darkness. First things first, want to go over some spring cleaning here, some house cleaning items. If you are new to the podcast, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in today to see us. Thank you for listening. This is an unapologetic, very, very raw account of living with CPTSD. We talk about all of the things involved, and many of these things we don't even talk about with therapists many times in my experience, in my own personal experience. I'm going to share a lot about my own personal experiences, but I'm also going to add in a lot of clinical knowledge that I have on the subject, as well as coming also from a place of faith, simply because of the fact that it was my faith and it literally was coming into the saving grace of Christ that began my healing journey. And so I have to share that because it's my truth and I know that it works. So if you are a visitor, please like and subscribe if this actually speaks to you, if this is something that you can relate to in any way. We are simply here to help other people that are living lives with CPTSD and trying to help everyone out there know that you're not alone and that there's many of us that suffer. But it's also, more importantly, a message of hope, because we don't have to live this way. Some of us, it takes a long time. It took me many, many, many years to accept the fact that I didn't have to live the way that I was living. I am not perfect, and I still have a long ways to go, but I think that what makes this so relatable, hopefully, to the audience, so that you understand that I'm still going through many of the struggles that you are, and how I navigate that, and hopefully some of these ways will help you navigate what you're dealing with as well. If you are a return listener, thank you so much for your support of the channel. We can't do anything without support. And I just want to say how much I value your comments. I'm not looking for anything from anybody, so you can comment whatever you want to say. It can be, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I just want you to know that your comments are imperative. Because they help me understand what kind of content to put on here, what's going to be useful to you. It absolutely affirms my journey when stuff that I say or that I do is relatable to you and it helps you in any way. That's the whole reason that I'm here. And last but not least, your comments also, it's a good thing for you. It's a good thing for you to speak how you're feeling and to put it out there in the comments, especially if something in the video is relatable. If something in the video, maybe it triggered you, maybe it upset you, this is a great time for you to just write out what you're feeling. I value that very, very much, and I just want to thank you so much for your support. As always, please, like and share this channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We try to drop a video every week, and I hope that it's good content, and I really, really hope that it's helping you. So last video we talked about emotional withdrawal. This is a big one. This is a huge thing that I've dealt with in my own journey with CPTSD, and I still have issues of emotional withdrawal. It's hardwired into our brain, and it can be what's called a reflexive thought, which we've talked about before. It can be a natural reaction, and so you can get past the emotional withdrawal and what it causes and what it's doing to you, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It takes some work, okay? And so we're going to talk about the steps that you have to do in order to consciously make an effort to get over the emotional withdrawal, whatever symptoms that you're dealing with or whatever that you find is hindering you in your relationships, okay? So we did a pretty raw video last time about what emotional withdrawal looks like. It's not pleasant. Just to recap that, we talked about how the reason why we emotionally withdraw, we talked about the fear of rejection, and that's because we're trying to avoid potential pain, or rejection, abandonment, whatever, because every relationship we've been in since childhood, there's been pain involved. There's been some emotional pain. There's been some abandonment. There's even been abuse for many of us. Okay, so a lot of times we have a fear of rejection, and we will emotionally withdraw, especially when we start to feel something for someone, because we are terrified of the pain that comes with that loss. Many of us, almost all of us with CPTSD, this is in relation to past trauma, whether it's, an abusive environment from your caregivers. It can be polytrauma. It can be a lot of things. Any time that we've had severe abuse or loss, this is something that develops in us. We learn to emotionally withdraw to protect ourselves. And it can also happen with overwhelming stress. It can be personal, professional, or social sources. It doesn't matter. But this can cause individuals also to retreat emotionally as a way to manage or escape their overwhelming feelings that they're having. How does it manifest? I'm just going to go over that real quick again if you didn't watch the last video. It starts with increased isolation. This is one of the things that we really do. And I got to tell you, if you're in a relationship with a narcissist or an abusive person, this isolation may not only be you choosing to be isolated. You could be forced to isolate based on the person that you're with, okay? Because that's one of the tactics that a narcissist uses, is to isolate you from any other support system. So there's a double whammy there. The problem is that we develop an even bigger feeling of loneliness as we isolate. Okay, so we think that we're instinctually doing what is going to protect us, but we end up feeling even more lonely. So it's really a double-edged sword when it comes to this. We experience emotional numbness. Okay, we can get to the point where there may just be a very noticeable connectivity, lack of connectivity between us and other human beings, and sometimes we don't even realize that it's happening, but we start getting to the point where we have a hard time not only acknowledging the emotions of others, but we start to not be able to express our own emotions. Okay, so we're not only feeling detached from other people, but we may feel detached from our own emotions as well. And then the big one with emotional withdrawal is a lack of trust, which our initial caregivers in life, the very people that were supposed to nurture us and love us and give us affection and all of these things, when they are the source of both our needs being met and a source of tremendous pain, we have difficulty trusting. You get to a point where I got to a point where I didn't even trust myself. I didn't even trust my own decisions. I didn't trust my own feelings. So it gets to that level. So let's go over some things that there's really not a whole lot that we can do here. Okay, it's some very black and white things that we're going to have to do if we want to start recovering from emotional withdrawal. Okay, this is not something that someone else can do for us. A lot of this is are things that we are going to have to make a conscious decision to put in the work, and it may not be comfortable. Okay, I know that it wasn't comfortable for me. It's a whole lot easier sometimes to stay in the dysfunction, to stay in the distrust, to stay in that place that is foreign, and that we, even though we know it's not healthy and it's bad, it's comfortable for us. It's what we're used to. It's what we're accustomed to based on our life. It's our go-to. So, one of the things I talked about in the last video, and when I talk about the protocol that I've created, the very first thing that the protocol does that we have to understand, the number one reason for the trauma discovery protocol, is self-awareness and reflection. We absolutely have to know who we are. We have to know why we do the things that we do. We have to have a deep understanding of this, because until you understand how you got to where you are, by understanding who you truly are at the core, healing cannot take place. It's just like a tree that doesn't have good roots. When we have a storm, it blows it over. It comes out of the ground. Okay, you got to have a good root system. And you got to understand the roots of your trauma and who you are before you can understand the stem and the leaves and fruit or flowers that are on the plant that have come out of the ground. That's the only way that healing is going to take place. Okay, so the first thing that we have to understand about ourselves is we have to, some people call them triggers. For the sake of CPTSD, we call them emotional flashbacks, but basically it's something that causes a visceral reaction in you. And this oftentimes can be through your olfactory system. It can be something you see, something you hear, something you smell, something you taste, something that touches you or that you touch. We can have a very visceral, immediate amygdala hijack reaction. Okay, and that's what we need to understand, is that this happens. Okay, and so we have to begin to understand, in order for us to get any kind of control of the situation, we have to start understanding what does trigger us, what does cause us to have an emotional flashback. Okay, and oftentimes if we try hard enough, we can start identifying some of these triggers. Okay, are there specific events or situations that cause this, and why do they cause that? It's not generally the current circumstances. It's something that triggers or makes us emotionally flashback to something that happened in the past, and understanding the relation to those two things. Avoidance is not necessarily a good coping mechanism, but we can be aware. We can be aware that certain situations are going to cause a reaction. And the benefit of this is that as we go through those situations and we are aware, we also understand that we survive the reaction, and eventually this does build some resilience, and these situations don't trigger us as bad, and they don't cause as much of an emotional flashback. Okay, so that's part of the healing process. We are aware of the situations, we're a little bit more cautious of certain environments or situations, but we don't want to avoid it. We want to allow ourselves to experience it so that we can develop resiliency, so that we can understand that we're safe and that we survived. Okay, and I'm not talking about abusive situations. I'm not talking about actual traumatic situations. Okay, we don't want to experience those if we can help it. Okay, I'm talking about if there are daily things, if there's daily environments, or there are daily tasks that you have to do, and there's a part of that that causes a visceral reaction. Let's be aware of it, and let's work through it, and let's get more resilient. Okay, and that's one of the things that we have to do if we're going to start actually not emotionally withdrawing. Okay, and we're going to get to why. Another thing, you've probably been told blue in the face by just about every therapist in the universe or every self-help guru about journaling. Okay, well, let's connotate this in a way that the CPTSD sufferer or survivor can understand. Okay, now when I'm going to tell you to journal, I'm not talking about a narrative. I'm not talking about writing a book. I'm not talking about keeping your little journal under your pillow at night, and at night we rehash the day and we do all of these things. Okay, there's a misconception there. Okay, when I tell people to journal, this is what I mean, because this is what I do. Always have a post-it notepad or a little notepad or a pen or a paper or a pencil. Have it available. When I tell people to journal, this is what I'm talking about. If a trigger or an emotional flashback or something pops in your head, an intrusive thought, whatever it is, write it down. Okay? If your brain is trying to ruminate on something and you're trying to remember it and it's causing you stress, whether it's a task or it's something you have to do, write it down. Okay? If you have a disturbing nightmare or a dream and you wake up and it's still bothering you, whatever you remember or whatever is bothering you, write it down. Okay? And so we're talking about one-line thoughts, one-word thoughts. It doesn't matter. Okay? And the reason why is twofold. Number one, our brain is set up that as soon as we write it down, it's less important. Okay? We have named it and we have written it down, and so our brain feels like it can move on to the next thing. Okay? Because we've addressed it. Okay? So that gives us a break from the anxiety. It gives us a break from the rumination. But also what it does is that later on, If you want to revisit this and you want to try to process it, you have it written down, okay? Because with PTSD and CPTSD, you will learn that one of the big problems with our narratives is either we leave integral details out or we embellish the details, okay? And that is the real conundrum when it comes to us processing things, is that our brain has discombobulated everything, and oftentimes we either miss critical details or we over embellish details. Okay, so when we get to a stage in therapy with someone, or like I got to a stage in therapy where we're actually doing a full-blown narrative of some of our experiences, we find oftentimes that there are things that don't belong in that narrative that didn't happen, but sometimes we also realize that there's things that were very, very important that happened in that narrative that we didn't remember or we didn't process correctly. Okay, so you tell somebody to journal, man, I can't tell you how many times people drop out of therapy or they say screw it or whatever because nobody feels like doing it. Okay, but I promise you, if you keep a little notepad and you write down these little random things, okay, you will have immediate relief. You will have immediate relief. And I'm telling you this because I literally do this every single day. Because with CPTSD, we have no timeline, we have no preconception or schedule of when something's going to affect us, or when it's going to come back, or when our brain's going to decide to process it, or we're going to have this dream or this nightmare this night. There's no predictable outcome here. And so I love having a little piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. I have one on the desk right now because I might have an experience as I'm doing this video. It doesn't matter. I'm going to write it down so that I can get it out of the forefront and I can move on. And if I want to later, I'll come and process that. Okay. But that immediately takes off a lot of the anxiety. It immediately takes off the rumination. I can feel actual physical relief in combination with that, and my breathing, my box breathing that we've talked about. I can actually feel some actual relief, which makes this whole thing tangible, right? And so if it's tangible, you're more willing to do it, okay? If you're getting actual results, you're more apt to do this because it's actually giving you some relief, okay? And I'm only going to tell you things that work because I've done it. I'm not going to ask you ever on this podcast, or if you were to do therapy with me or whatever, I will never, ever patronize you or tell you to do something that I haven't done that hasn't worked for me, that I know 100% from personal experience that it works and it helps, okay? Because I intimately understand beyond anything you can believe what you're dealing with. Whoever it is watching this video, I understand because I've been through a lot, and I'm not saying that to get recognition for myself. I'm just saying that I believe that God allowed me to go through a lot of different things so that I would have more utility to help as many people as possible, okay? Try me. Comment. Send me an email. I'll be honest with you. If you send me something that I've never experienced, I'll be very candid with you, okay? But in my 17 years that I've been running this practice, I have not come up with a scenario yet, especially with a CPTSD survivor, that I don't understand intimately, whether it happened to me or it's happened to another client or I've witnessed it. Okay? So I challenge you, give me a chance. You got something that's on your plate that you need to get rid of, that you need some help with, that you just need to say something, send me a comment, send me an email. Okay? I'll do whatever I can to help you. I'm going to put on here, I don't often recommend therapy unless I know that it's going to work. You know, one of the things I do with my protocol is that I specifically tell people, based on the protocol results, what therapy is going to have the most impact for them, short term and long term. Oftentimes, it's going to be therapy that I don't offer, and that's fine. I don't do EMDR. I don't do IFS. Those are not models that I do. I do a lot of other things, and sometimes the things that I do are very helpful. Sometimes they may not be for you. So I have other people that I trust that are in the field that share my values, and I refer people. Okay, so therapy does have value. It really does. I have learned in my own experience that the first thing I had to understand was that God was there and that He was bigger than my trauma. Because until I was able to do that, I didn't trust another human on this earth, especially a therapist. Okay? God has also put people like myself out there that have been through a lot and experienced a lot, and they're not just speaking from a clinical knowledge point of view or a scholastic point of view. They're talking from an experiential point of view because they've been there and done that. And the end and most fruitful part of our healing journey is when we get to this stage and we're helping other people. This is our ultimate validation. This is our ultimate ability to heal, is that our experiences are turned into something positive to help someone else. So I believe in this cycle. Just like there's a cycle of evil and violence and sin and pain and trauma, I also believe in the cycle of redemption and restoration and healing through other people that have been in the fire and they've been burned and they've come out of it. So I'm just going to throw some of the therapeutic interventions that do work relatively well. If you have a seasoned therapist that also has some experiential knowledge, we really need to get the right and left hemisphere of the brain involved together, and then we need to break that down further, and we need to get the 4 quadrants of the brain all together. This is where people have a major problem with me, because you're not going to often find a therapist that can do all 4, okay? And quite frankly, I don't think that you're doing justice to your client if you claim to have expertise in all 4 of these things, because you don't have the capacity in your own human brain. You need to be a master at 1 or 2 at least, so that you can help your client when they're in your presence. And then the other half of this is, if they need other expertise, you need to have a network of professionals that you trust that you can refer them to, okay? Because we need holistic healing. So cognitive behavioral therapy, which stimulates the left part of the brain and helps us understand our beliefs and how to challenge those, this is a great therapy. But it's only working in a small part of the trauma environment and the trauma symptoms and the holistic approach of what we're dealing with, okay? So we throw in some other things with this, like psychodynamic therapy. We throw in, cognitive processing therapy, exposure therapy, and then there's all of these other lesser known therapies that can fall into the holistic healing model, okay? We have the Safe and Sound protocol. We have art therapy. We have a lot of things out there that may not be the main therapeutic model, but they can accentuate, okay? And this is where, if you're going to find a therapist, you need to find somebody that's very, very seasoned in this area, that is a specialist for CPTSD, and that is willing to put their ego aside and to work with a network. Because if I tap into somebody with cognitive behavioral therapy, and then I find out that the creative part of the brain is surfacing, they're starting to respond to auditory, or they're starting to be able to draw or to be able to write a narrative, then I'm going to get them with a specialist in that area, because I want every faculty possible in your brain and in your body and in your spirit to be on board with the healing process. I don't want to heal 20% of you. I want to figure out how to get 100% restoration. And so this is what you need to be open to, that one size doesn't fit all. You are very specifically crafted by God, cell by cell. Your traumas are yours and no one else's. And how you deal with those and process those are based on a lot of things. Your temperament, your personality, your attachment, all kinds of things, okay? Your nutrition, your lack of sleep, it's all comorbid with each other. And we need to understand that, okay? So be open to that type of thing. If you start getting some traction in one area and they feel that you can get more traction in another area, hopefully you have developed a therapeutic alliance with that person and you trust them enough to send you to another good person, okay? But It's going to take some effort. It's going to take some work, but I want you to know it's possible. It's absolutely possible. And where we fail in therapy so many times is that we go to that one person and they're only good at this one model, and they're very, very good at that one model of therapy, but it's only scratching the surface of our healing. Okay, we're leaving there with 20% to 15% restoration, and we have this whole other 80% that's left there, that's scarred and wounded and not healed. And these are the type of things that we're going to have to do in order to stop emotionally withdrawing, because we are not going to be even willing to face or even touch our emotions until we start feeling some safety and some security. Okay. Let's talk about some gradual reconnection that we can do on our own. Don't be afraid to reach out to a friend or someone at church, or someone that you trust, that you know is going to be there for you. Okay, if you don't have that person, then we need to work on finding you that person, whether it's a therapist or a clergy person or something. Oftentimes we don't even realize that those people are there. People I've served with in the military and then as a first responder and different things, we're all carrying the same stuff, but yet we forget to reach out to each other. So sometimes we have to be the initiator of the contact. We can't expect everybody else to initiate contact with us, because quite frankly, with CPTSD, we won't reciprocate, will we? Oftentimes, because of that whole trust issue. So don't be afraid to reach out. It can be something very, very simple. You don't have to get on the phone and say, hey, I'm in full-blown crisis. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be, hey, do you want to go share, have a breakfast burrito? It doesn't matter, okay? And then the doors will open. The doors will open for dialogue, okay? Participate in some activities. There are things that you enjoyed that you have forgotten that you enjoyed. Maybe it's being outdoors, fishing, hunting, recreating outdoors, hiking. Maybe you like to play games. Maybe you like to play video games. Find some things that you enjoyed at one time and rekindle those things. It's very, very important. These are some things that we need to do. We need to be able to engage in things that we enjoy, that give us some level of peace or satisfaction. Another thing that works really well with CPTSD, believe it or not, is group therapy. And I'm going to talk about a specific type of group therapy. I think that clinically administered group therapy, I think that they mean well, but I see that every group that I've been in like that, people clam up and they don't want to share. Now, the off-the-grid things like Reboot, First Line, these very intimate 12-week groups where you have an off-grid group, a mixture of people that sign up, nobody knows each other, and you end up, it takes a little while to break ground with these things, but I taught and facilitated and sponsored these things for years and years and years, and they work really, really well. Because it gets into a state of shared vulnerability. It gets into a state where you start bonding with people at a very intimate level. We start to understand that we're not alone, and we end up developing some amazing friendships and relationships coming out of these. So I absolutely suggest one of those groups like Reboot or First Line or like a off-the-grid type, maybe even church-sponsored trauma group that's very, very private and very, very safe, and you don't feel like you're being psychoanalyzed or that you're in this sterile clinical environment. These really do work. Okay, the last thing I want to go over, and the second to the last, I want to go over two more things. The next thing I want to go over is that we need to understand that there are some communication skills that we need to work on, okay? If we're going to be able to stop emotionally withdrawing, we need to be able to develop some healthy communication styles, okay? So we need to practice accepting, realizing, and seeing what our actual feelings are and being able to share those. And it doesn't have to be this, I know when I say share your feelings, everybody's like, okay, I'm done with this video, see you later. Look, trust me, I understand. Okay, I'm not talking about this Hallmark movie moment. Okay, I'm talking about simple things like being able to tell somebody, hey, when you do that, it pisses me off. Or when you do that, it hurts my feelings. Or, I'm agitated by that. Or on the reversal, being able to give people positive emotions, like, I really like you. Okay? It's hard for us to say the L word, right? The love word. We're terrified of that. But you'll get there. So start using I statements as the big things. I feel this way when. Okay? Start with people that you trust, whether it's in an intimate relationship or, it's people that you work with, whatever, where you feel like, hey, I can do this in a completely unoffensive way, but I can also get it off my chest. We need to start practicing doing these things and not being afraid. Active listening. We need to also be able to listen intently to other people so that we can understand what they are trying to tell us, okay? And not just blowing it off and hiding from it, especially if it involves emotional stuff. If somebody is sharing their emotions with us and we are equally terrified of their emotions as we are terrified of our own, we need to also start practicing the active listening so that we can in turn be there for other people. And as we learn to be there for other people, we actually get more comfortable with expressing how we feel as well. Okay? And empathy. And like I said, many of us are already very empathic because we come out of these abusive environments and we are already highly sensitive to everybody else's feelings based on what we had to navigate to survive. And so we end up being very empathetic to those around us. We deeply understand their grief or their pain or whatever, and we feel it, okay? And, we have talked about that in past videos, how we have to develop boundaries. I mean, that's one of the many things that's involved in my protocol is we look at, how empathetic a person is, simply for the fact that we want to suggest different things for them to do to protect themselves, because we can get strung out and we can get depleted pretty quickly if we are empaths and we don't have some healthy boundaries, okay? But it's also a healthy thing for you to be able to see what someone else is going through, because it will in turn help you understand yourself more intimately. People talk about mindfulness, all the thing as being a great practice for anxiety and other things. I prefer prayer. Prayer is my form of mindfulness. I find that if I'm talking to God, it offers a distraction. It helps me not to be worrying. It helps me to be seeking something bigger than myself. And I get a lot of peace from that. I also physical exercise, simply for that, there's a lot of benefit there. You're releasing endorphins that really help counteract the stress hormones. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. It gives you a way to feel good about yourself. And like I said, hobbies, things that you're interested in, try to rekindle that. But also we need to learn how to relax, which is a really tough one for me. When you're tired, you need to be able to let yourself rest. And that's a tough one. And we need to develop supportive relationships, okay? You are not alone out here with this, and you're going to meet other people that understand, and you're also going to be sent people by God that are here to help you. And this is the support system we need to start forming. It's not about you being weak or being a liability or any of these things that we're taught. It's about you understanding that we all need a support system to survive and to get over. We are a hive environment. We are a pack environment. This is how we were created. We need to understand that we were never created to be alone. And so we need to embrace that. It's all very reciprocal. The more that we embrace that, the more we get plugged into helping other people, but also the more that we learn how to trust. And we learn how to be able to recognize our feelings and express those feelings. This is how we start coming out of that emotional withdrawal process, okay? And this is the only way that we're going to do it. We have to do a large part of the work, and we have to do the other thing that's very uncomfortable, and we have to accept the help of others openly and without fear of having to reciprocate. I hope that this video helped you today. I know that a lot of this is probably overwhelming, and this is not one of these things where I'm telling you, okay, I want you to do all of these things tomorrow. It's baby steps. It's baby steps. You do one thing at a time, and as you get comfortable, you raise the bar just a little bit higher, okay? So that what we're trying to do is achievable, it's tangible, and you can feel the relief and feel the positive effects of what you're doing. Well, until next time, I hope that you all have a wonderful week. I pray for my audience. I pray for whoever is out there listening to this. I really hope that something I've said today makes you have a call to action, makes you maybe want to figure out who you are. Maybe it wants to, maybe you want to delve into this a little bit deeper. We have a lot of videos on the channel that cover a lot of different aspects of CPTSD, so please use that as a resource. Like I said, comment. If you liked the video, please subscribe, like, share, because what that does is it gets it out there to more people, and I'm only here to help. This is at the stage I am with my life and my practice, and what I'm doing to continue to heal myself. It's not about what I'm telling you, it's about showing you the action. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's me doing the action, actively healing by sharing my experiences, being raw and vulnerable and completely transparent with the audience. And I hope that you can feel that and see that, and that this helps you in some sort of way. Until next time, God bless. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.